So, today was supposed to be a really fun day. We were going to do the Jonah story, which is probably part of why it got brought into the reflection earlier. Jonah is one of my favorite books because it is the only book of the Bible written to be a comedy. It's full of jokes, dry humor. That's why there's the giant fish. That's why it's about a guy who tries and runs and hides from God. How do you run and hide from God? The only book of the Bible where when the person charged by God to tell somebody they're doing everything wrong, they actually listen and repent and do better, and then the prophet gets mad. That's what we were supposed to be talking about today. The sermon's one of my greatest hits collection. I like it. You all like it because you've heard it before, but it was pre-pandemic, so nobody remembers anything from those days. And we all need a laugh. And then, like so often happens, the news broke loose with a headline. The Supreme Court decided to take 50 years of precedent and dump gasoline on America by overturning Roe versus Wade. We knew it was coming. The draft opinion leaked, what was it, a month ago? But personally, I still hoped it wouldn't happen. So much for that. I hoped it wouldn't happen because I don't like abortion. I don't like talking about it. I don't like the conversations around it, the rhetoric. I feel like they miss the point half the time. It's a complex issue. I don't know how to do it in a little 3-page sermon. But here we are. I hoped it wouldn't happen even more importantly, because overturning Roe versus Wade is going to put women's lives in danger. Every major Protestant denomination, go down the street, folks, the Presbyterians, the UCC, the Methodists, the Lutherans, everybody in the 70s supported legalizing abortion because women were dying. They were dying in back alleys, and they were dying in hospitals. Ireland just overturned its ban on abortion by popular referendum in 2018 because a woman died. She went into the hospital in the midst of a miscarriage with a headache and in chronic pain. The doctors knew a miscarriage was imminent. But they couldn't do the abortion even though she was in pain, even though she had a headache, even though they knew the baby wasn't going to make it, because there was still a heartbeat. And the ban said you could only perform the procedure if the woman's life was threatened. Her life wasn't threatened. The next day, when she went septic, her life was threatened. A review board said it should have happened. It didn't, because they were still scared they'd get in trouble. And she died. Why should a woman be about to die in order to save her life? I spent 4 hours trying to write the sermon for today. 4 hours on 2 pages. Then Joe finally said, "Why don't you just say I tried to write the sermon, then I realized I have a penis and should have women talk about this. And then just play the video from last night." So I'm doing that. I'm very thankful these bans weren't in place in the 1980s. Joe was born due to IVF. under several bans currently in several states, and also one working its way through Columbus, IVF will be illegal because of how it defines personhood. For IVF, you have to create more embryos than you would implant because some don't thrive. You usually implant more than is really viable. Women end up with triplets and quadruplets and whatnot, which threaten her life and the lives of the other children. So not regularly, actually rarely, but it happens, selective reduction, i.e. abortion, has to happen. They have to remove some of the embryos in order for the others to thrive and for the woman's life not to be threatened. That will be illegal. If that ban had been in place and IVF had been illegal in the 80s, I wouldn't have my wife now. I wouldn't have her to give me such good advice and let the people with the uteruses talk. So here now is an excerpt from Hope Beyond Roe, a service of gathering and lament. It features Sandy Sorensen, director of the UCC Washington office, our head for public policy advocacy. Reverend Lois Powell, who retired in 2016 from the denominational office of the United Church of Christ after serving in various positions of leadership for almost 20 years. And you will hear from Reverend Tracy Blackman, our current Associate General Minister for Justice and Local Church Ministries.
Beginning in 1971, United Church of Christ General Synods have supported access to safe, legal abortions as part of the critical range of reproductive health care services. Synod resolutions have rooted this witness in a holistic, inclusive understanding of individual and community self-determination and well-being. It is best expressed in the definition of reproductive justice that was just cited by my colleague Cheryl Lindsay, and it bears repeating in its power. Reproductive justice is the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, to have children, to not have children, and to parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. So in that regard, synods since that time have upheld the right of men and women to have access to adequately funded family planning services and to safe legal abortions as one option among many. They have affirmed the need for adequately funding support systems, including healthcare and daycare services for those who wish to raise children. And they have defended and advocated for attempts to further marginalize and discriminate against the most vulnerable among us, particularly women of color and low-income women. God has created us, our synod witnesses tell us, as moral agents who, accompanied by our faith tradition, our community and faith lives and relationships, our families, our friends, and our medical care providers, with the right and responsibility to make decisions about our lives and our well-being. Grounded in its foundational ecumenical commitment to ecumenical and interfaith relationships and partnerships, the UCC has long been working across the interfaith spectrum to engage in reproductive justice advocacy, including the access to safe, legal abortions. Beginning in 1973 with what was then called the Religious Coalition for abortion rights, and continuing on today as the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. The UCC continues to partner with interfaith allies in the work of reproductive justice advocacy, and that includes access to safe legal abortions through education, grassroots mobilization, legal advocacy, direct support for reproductive service providers, and electoral engagement. And rest assured, this work, together with you and a whole host of others, will continue in the future.
We continue with Psalm 139. If I say, I will lie about who I am, even to myself, so you cannot find me, even my deceit cannot deceive you. You see through all my masks as truth, for all I am is truth to you. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. With her consent, and when she willed my body to be carried in hers, you were with her too, not using her, but with her. In her choices, you set your wisdom. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in mystery, intricately woven in the depths of earth and water and mother. You, God, beheld the possibility of me. In your book were written all the days that were possible for me, when none of them as yet existed. And in goodness, you chose my mother, to choose when she wanted and was able to bring a pregnancy to term, to bring possibility into reality, to nurture mystery into child by her own body. The stakes are so high in understanding your wisdom, God. How vast is the sum of knowledge that makes and sustains life. I try to count it. It is like unending sand on the shore of a vast ocean. I come to the end. I am still with you.
Today has been quite a day for many of us, and that's why we're here in this mode. The first thing I did after watching some of the response to the Supreme Court decision was to go plant some flowers in the ground. That gives me hope. It gives me grounding. And I was going to say some things, but I want to start with this. It is the work of the Spirit that brought three people together on this day to hear this decision. My spouse, Brenda Joyner, are hosting Sandy Sorensen. So here we have one woman who has devoted her life to public policy advocacy around so many issues, but especially this issue and women's issues. And Brenda Joyner, my spouse of 26 years, who for 18 years was the director of the Feminist Women's Health Center in Tallahassee, Florida, providing reproductive care, including abortion, to countless women in the southern region there. She lost one of her doctors in 1993, who was murdered in Pensacola, where he also provided health services to the clinic there. And then you have me, who had an abortion in 1970, pre-Roe. And I have devoted my life and much of my life to this issue in multiple ways over the years. And I say all that because those of us in the United Church of Christ and those of us beyond the United Church of Christ who care about this issue often care about this issue because it is personal. It hits close to home, whether it's a sister or a niece, a mother, even a grandmother, or oneself, a spouse. It hits close to home, and we want to do something. The United Church of Christ got involved with other faith groups to form the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice and to advocate for this because women were losing their lives to unsafe procedures. And women were not able to access health care. If they were poor, if they couldn't travel out of state or out of the country. And we knew that this was not how the love of God was to be expressed. So we got very involved, and it has been a blessing to be involved in an interfaith way. Many clergy joined Planned Parenthood's Clergy for Choice networks. Even before Roe, there were many in the United Church of Christ, many clergy who were part of the Clergy Consultations Service, which provided counseling for women who found themselves pregnant, and if they chose to terminate and have an abortion, found a way for them to have often an illegal but a safe abortion. They risked their lives. They risked much doing that work. And those of us who have personally experienced this have just could not imagine that this is not possible. But now we're in a situation where we have to join hands with each other. We have to find the networks in our respective states. We have to show up at state legislatures and say, this is not right. We cannot have this. We have to join with the masses who will be testifying all over this country and hopefully voting this fall so that we can protect this right for women. We can reverse what's going on in the states. We can support legislation, hopefully in Congress, that will make this a national law. My partner, Brenda Joyner, was one of the founders of the reproductive justice concept and movement. And our capacity to form coalitions of strength, to help all women be who they need to be, all of those who find themselves pregnant, all persons making a difficult decision, or those couples who want in vitro fertilization and now can't get it in some states, will have to join our voices and know that there are multiple versions and visions and understanding from people of faith about human life, about contraception, about all kinds of things, and no one particular religious perspective has the right to determine that for all of us. And that is what we need to bring to the public arena and to each other. So I encourage us to do what Sandy has encouraged us to do as well, and also to hold on to some hope that we can move to that place. We can move to that place where God's love for every single one of us is embraced, understood, and rejoiced in.
Greetings, friends. I did not think I would be able to be with you today, and I'm glad that I have the opportunity to share in just a moment of this. It has been a rough day, a rough week, a rough journey. The storm has been heavy, but we are rooted in something that is greater than this moment. We are rooted in something that is greater than ourselves. We are rooted in the truth of God's word, the power of God's spirit. We are rooted in the truth that we are all connected and that none of us are free until all of us are free. No Supreme Court decision, no state law changes or supersedes divine law. And I am so incredibly grateful to be rooted here with all of you in a denomination that has known that before Roe v. Wade ever passed, has known it through every attack, and still knows it now. Today was a blow, but it was just a blow. We've taken time to pause, to rest, to reflect, to lament, and tomorrow we will journey on, and we will keep journeying until the value of every human being is recognized, respected, and honored in us and in our judicial and legal systems.